Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the Italian election, of course, being held the other day. The nationalists, the Mussolini-ites have won. Oh my god, Putin is celebrating. It's the end of the EU as we know it. It's the end of the world. Pretty soon, fascism and Russia will win everything. We're hearing an awful lot of rambling and some election denial, by the way. I noticed that no old tech site is banning people for questioning the veracity of the Italian election. Very intriguing considering the situation. Meloni is presumptively going to now become the first female prime minister of Italy. She happens to be a strong, empowered woman who don't need no socialism, which is good. Fratelli d'Italia is her party. And it evolves out of what had been a post-fascist political movement. It has changed since then. You've seen a lot of parties readjusting themselves over time because political parties want to be elected. It's funny when the Democrats rebrand themselves, so they go from being, very, very, very cautious civil union Dems to throwing all their weight behind gay marriage. Or they go from saying, no, we don't really want more gun control, we've sort of achieved parity, to saying, no, we're going to take your guns or something. That scene is fine. But if a party like Fratelli d'Italia says, okay, we're letting go of some of the old dross that was holding us back, and we're embracing a new, vaguely populistic sort of memorandum, it's conceived of as propaganda. These individuals are clearly doing it out of malevolence just to win so that they can bring back Mussolini. Very, very interesting, again, the double standard here. Let's look at, though, what Meloni and her party actually want. Let's look at the docket of the things they actually wish to proceed with politically, and then ask ourselves if it approximates fascism or anything like that. I argue no. It's quite clear that it doesn't. Number one, the idea that, Putin has gained a valuable ally within the EU too, and NATO. This is the end of all things. Nuclear war is coming. You realize that her party is explicitly pro-NATO, correct? It's just not explicitly pro-EU, at least in its current form, and that's really the other main platform. The EU is not working economically for Europeans right now. We see the effects even here in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a post-industrial banking juggernaut with an enormous amount of infrastructure and efficiency. It's still having economic issues because of the hefty top-down system of the globalists, the Klaus Schwab types. It's affecting even the seat of power within the EU, Brussels, the Belgians getting hammered as well. Look at the energy prices. Look at the crisis with regards to migrants in some of these countries and the pushback that you're getting. Something that I've warned of for years is now happening, which is that you rejected the idea of a more half-hearted reform, which is literally all people wanted from the EU. And so now you're getting the uprising of movements that you conceive of as being really far out there. It's not just, movements like this that are more on the populistic end. You're also getting the rise of socialism. There are Antifa stickers all over the place if you go into Central Anchide, for example. These are things that are increasing in form, and they're feeding off of one another. Thankfully, the Italians chose a party that is not really that far out there. The idea of Euroscepticism a la Meloni is half-assed compared to what UKIP was pushing. You're not looking at an Italexit. You're looking at the devolution of EU power from a superstate-style model, which is financed by the Dutch and the Belgians in Brussels politically, in Amsterdam, literally in the banking sector, and by German manufacturing and by, the cheap Eastern European manpower. It's sort of a microcosm of what the US does with Latin America and what China does with Southeast Asia. It moves from that superstate model, that globalistic system, to one that has devolved into more of a confederated sort of idea. So you have a loose set of rules, a general human rights convention sort of constitutional framework, and then you let the states take care of their own business. And the reason why I warned of the superstate encroaching model is because you've got to understand that when we talk about Europe or Europeans, we're talking about 100 different disparate groups of people, even within the civic states comprising the European Union. You've got dozens of different languages spoken. You've got many different economic situations. You have multiple different sorts of cultural tie-ins where people in one EU nation may say, look, we're not happy with the idea of taking in people from foreign areas that don't speak the lingo and in many cases don't attempt to assimilate. Our economy can't handle it. You have other countries that say, well, cheap labor, it sounds great for us. You know, we'll drive down wages, we'll screw our own middle class and working class in the process. We'll do exactly what the Democrats want to do in the United States. Very interesting. Italy's economy is not the same as the Dutch economy. Spain's economy is not the same as Finland's economy. Within the entirety of Europe, whether it's EU, Eurozone, or general NATO, or just Europe in general, you have different economic and political and cultural situations. That sort of alliance, which is prefaced on a fairly recent concept of Europeanism, is not the same. It attempts to approximate the United States. But the United States incepted from the get-go from the same stock of people who had already pulled together several centuries ago. The EU and the Eurozone in general is a more modern experiment that seeks to basically look at the United States, say, hey, it worked for them, it can work for us. But it's not being incepted the same. You don't have the same rugged individualism, period. You can't have a Homestead Act. You've already filled up every available square inch of land. If anything, they're trying to set aside more of it to devolve back into forest because they cut down every tree in fucking Europe. All of the forests here, they seem to look like giant cornfields for a reason. Just gonna go out and say that. There's not a whole lot of old growth left unless you go to the Carpathian Mountains or the middle of Transylvania or something like that. Italy has, in my opinion, chosen wisely. So now the spurging begins. Her past comments, Meloni's comments, with regards to Mussolini, the front page news. Not the fact that they want to devolve the EU back to a softer form in order to allow nations more economic and political malleability. Not the fact that she's explicitly fucking pro-NATO and so is her party's own statements. So we're not talking about a party that's Russophile. They're going to stop helping the Ukrainians. By the way, Pink Floyd getting canceled over that. By God, we're going to be talking about that in today's live stream because it's the most hilarious liberal fail that I've ever seen. This is not fascism. If anything, devolving even a post-national power structure back to a previous incarnation to soften its ability to tell people what to do is the opposite of fascism. What are you talking about? You're likely to get more free marketeering under Meloni's leadership than you are to get more socialistic-style left-weight economics, which is the hallmark of fascism. I still, by the way, find it hilarious that fascism is usually rendered a right-wing ideology when the concept of a fusion of corporate and state power together, becoming joined at the hip and using that power for various means, is the opposite of a laissez-faire system. If anything, it's more left-wing than many socialists propose their systems as being, just saying that most people don't understand what fascism actually is. You have a soft variant of it in the United States between big tech and the legacy media, supposedly private entities, working directly with the Biden administration. That's closer to fascism than anything you're likely to get from Meloni. So congrats to the wise people of Italy for going against the grain and rejecting the globalists. The main frontline news is that it's the most far-right government since World War II. Most far-right government since Mussolini himself. Oh my God, where have we heard Mussolini brought up before? Oh, it's in U.S. politics again. The idea of guarding your borders, giving topical tax relief, and not starting a bunch of wars is somehow considered to be a form of Nazism or fascism now. Now, Germany maybe hauls off and does the same thing. It'll be hilarious to see the reaction there. I see the same groups, by the way. I talked about this last month. I had a video on the subject. Or did I put it in a live stream? Can't quite remember. Do you remember when they're saying we need Germany to wake up? I can't remember if it was Newsweek or one of these others. And I analyzed it and I said that's very, very painfully close to a slogan that was used in the 1930s. I don't think that you want Germany to wake up and start rearming. I think that's a bad idea. Those same groups that are telling Germany erwacht, all of a sudden are very, very upset about the idea of basic populism. Pro-NATO populism. We're not even talking about an anti-globalist movement here other than maybe the layer of post-globalism like the wokeness and shit in Italy. We're talking about populism. It's closer to MAGA than to anything else. And I warn people, when these movements spring up, you should embrace them. Number one, they'll do a good job, and number two, the alternative is people go way, way far out. It won't be a far-right in name party like Fratelli d'Italia. It'll be an actual far, far right. It'll be reactionaries and people that make the Inquisition look mild by comparison, or you'll end up under fucking communism. I've warned about this for goddamn years. Thank goodness these populist movements, the Brexiteers in Britain, Fratelli d'Italia, please don't attack each other while I'm making a video here, thank you Kitty, MAGA in the United States, etc., etc. These are mild reform movements, and that's all they will ever be. But that's all we need. We need to reform the globalistic crap that we're all having to deal with and go back to a previous incarnation of the world where people generally did live in peace. We had a good thing going on when we had the Soviet Union to fight, and now all of a sudden they're trying to take the pale visage of post-Sovietism a la Russia invading a neighbor and trying to extrapolate that to being the same exact thing as the Cold War. It's not working so well to create cultural cohesion, and it ain't because of Russian disinfo agents, by the way. That's about all. Peace out.